Have you ever wondered how the President of the United States is actually elected? Surprisingly, many Americans are unaware of the general concepts related to how the President is elected. Fortunately for all of you, I'm here today to discuss how the President is elected through the use of the Electoral College and how the Electoral College has evolved throughout the course of history. Understanding the history of this system and how it's been adapted throughout history provides further opportunity to understand the current workings and operations of the system. First, let me provide you with a brief history of the system. The Deputy Director of the FEC, or the Federal Elections Commission, William C. Kimberlin, states that the history of the Electoral College can be dated back to 1787, when the government had to develop a way to elect the President. Now, Kimberlin further suggests that during this time period, there's approximately a population of 4 million people. Now, this is of importance because the entire population was isolated to the eastern seaboard. Now, the Electoral College can be traced back all the way to the Centurial Assembly of the Roman Republic. Kimberlin suggests that the system used during this time period allowed pre-distinguished groups of 100 people to cast one single vote either for or against proposals of the Roman Senate. Now, although these pre-distinguished groups were based on a person's wealth, the function of the system itself is closely related to the one that's used in modern time. There are various dilemmas when choosing a system to elect the president. The Constitutional Convention understood this and developed 4 potential ways to elect the president. The first was having Congress elect the president. The second was to have state legislators elect the president. The third was to use a popular vote system. And the fourth was to use the Electoral College. Now, the ideas of having state legislators and Congress elect the president and a popular vote system were later rejected for various reasons, such as it causing an imbalance in power and the fear that states would elect officials from their home states, thus having the presidency decided on larger, more populated regions. Now, with these ideas eliminated, the Electoral College became the definitive solution. Now, you must be thinking, how is a system this old able to function in modern day? Well, that's a good question, and to explain that, let me explain how it's evolved. Robert Longley, who wrote the Electoral College system, points out that the operation in the system has seen many changes throughout the course of history. One of the most prominent changes was the development of political parties, the development of the Democratic and Republican Party. Now, as a result of that, later on in history, the 12th Amendment was constructed. Now, the 12th Amendment, which is found in the United States Constitution, declared that an elector could only cast one vote for president and one vote for vice president. Prior to that, an elector would vote 2 votes for the president, and then the runner-up would be elected the vice president. Now, one more key point I'd like to make related to the evolution of the Electoral College is that technology was unlike modern day, and that the infrastructure of the United States was nearly non-existent. This required that all state electors and representatives collect their votes and then meet weeks later to cast their respective votes. Now, although our infrastructure has improved and technological advancements have been off the charts as of late, and making this particular issue obsolete, it is important to note that this is the reason why there's such a delay between the actual election day and the day that the president is sworn into office. Now that I've provided you with a brief understanding of the Electoral College and how it's developed, let me discuss how it's currently operating. The National Archives Administration, along with Kimberlin and Longley, provide remarkable information regarding the current operations of the Electoral College. It is important to note that the presidential election does not have a particular date each year. Now, this is because by law, the presidential election is to occur on the first Tuesday after the first Monday of November. Now, this means that the presidential election can occur anywhere from November 2nd all the way to November 8th. Now, considering this, on this date, the general public will cast their vote. And because of technology, we are quickly informed of the outcome. And this leads us to conclude the winners. Although this is a sign of the probable outcome, it is not until the first Monday after the second Wednesday in December that each of the actual electors meet at the state capitals to submit their actual votes. Now, it's important to note also that there's no law that's binding them to supporting the general population, so their vote is theoretically in their hands. Now, the number of electoral votes appointed to a state is directly associated with the state's population. The National Archives Administration states that this is due to a population of the state constantly changing, the number of representatives within a state changes every 10 years. This is why we conduct a census, or at least one of the reasons. Now, with the exception of Maine and Nebraska, the candidate that wins the majority of the electoral votes wins all the state electoral votes. This is not the case in Maine and Nebraska, as these are proportionate. Currently, the first candidate to receive 270 electoral votes wins the presidency, and as Robert Longley writes, once that occurs, the President of Congress will read the results on January 6th, and the new President and Vice President are sworn into office at noon on January 20th. Now, considering the importance of the presidential office within the United States, it is my sincere hope that you now each have received relative information of how their president is elected. I discussed the origins of the Electoral College, how it was adopted by the United States, various changes that have been seen in the workings of the system, and finally how the system currently functions. Now, this is a topic that should be of some importance to each of us, as it is a system that elects the highest office in our government. In closing, please know that this was just a brief overview of the system. However, I strongly encourage each of you to conduct further research. Let me leave you with this last question. How can we each enact change without understanding the structure, operation, and system that enacts the most powerful change within our political system? Thank you.